you for being here. I know you guys had many options. Thanks for choosing to be here. So I'm Shekhar Madishetty. I'm part of the Guidewire product management team, focused mainly on integration aspects. And that's the topic for today. Okay. We also have Chris Wavra here, who actually leads the overall app services product management team. I'll talk to you what that is about. And he'll help me. So he and I can probably tag team if you have questions on integration gateway or app service at the end of the session. Okay, that's the fine print. All it's saying is a non-legal speak is that I'm going to talk about the product features and which are subject to change without notice. We'll try to be as accurate as possible based on what we know today, but things could change. So here is the quick overview of the agenda. I'm going to start with introducing Guidewire Cloud Integration Framework, and then deep dive into the integration gateway, which is the topic for today. And then we'll have a quick demo to show you how you can actually work with integration apps and manage the lifecycle. And then we'll follow up with a few sample use cases, what you should do, what you should not do, right? And then we'll just wrap it up with some call to actions. And then we'll take the questions at the end, right? So that'll at least, because we have a lot to cover here. So you may have seen this before, right, in several presentations we have here. So this is the Guidewire Cloud platform, also known as GWCP. So app services or application services is one of the main components of the Guidewire Cloud platform. Mainly, the capabilities it provides are like cloud rules, if you're familiar with, workflow, right? These are additional configurations which you need to make for the core applications. App services also includes integration services, which is to help you bridge between InsuranceSuite and third-party services, and then DevOps services associated to help with these integration services. So the focus today will be integration services, right? And then we'll deep dive into some of these. So I'm sure we all here will agree that integration is hard. It is complex, right? If someone said, I solved the problem for integration, I would like to get the autograph today, because that person is going to be a trillionaire at some point, right? But in general, it's hard, right? And there's so many technology standards out there to kind of help with the integration, but there is no integration standard, right? And those are two different things. And so if you look at any of the major cloud platforms, think about like Salesforce, ServiceNow, and so on, everyone actually provides an integration framework to help with, to make it easier to build integrations. And typically, the integration frameworks includes best practices, patterns, they include utilities to help speed up the development, right? And we are kind of in a similar journey here, right? We started with Cloud Integration Framework for Guidewire. What it does, it helps you with integrating within the Guidewire platform and also with third-party services. So here are some of the key capabilities of Guidewire Cloud Platform. So you have Cloud API, which you may know already. We've released this I think 2 releases ago, right? And we've been enhancing it. So this is an inbound REST API. It's a standardized way to access InsuranceSuite, business data or business functions. And then you have app events, which is new part of the Cloud Integration Framework. And we have a session dedicated just for that. So this is mainly a standardized way to publish outbound messages from InsuranceSuite in response to something changing in the core application. Let's say you have claim created, claim changed, which generates events, and you want to send an outbound message so that you can react to it and make some business decision, right? REST client is a outbound for making outbound calls from InsuranceSuite, mainly for interactive scenarios. Let's say you have a UI component, and you need to, as an example, like a prefill, right? you need to get some data, right? So that's to make a REST outbound calls. Integration gateway is a topic for today. It's mainly to bridge between your InsuranceSuite and third-party applications, and we'll spend a lot more time there. Data Studio, this is a very specific kind of integration to deal with data at rest. So let's say you have a batch data you need to integrate into or feed into analytic engines. That's the integration. It's very specific to data at rest. So, so let's deep dive into the integration gateway here. So before we jump into what we are trying to do, why we actually introduce integration gateway, let's start with how you do integrations today, right? I'm calling it traditional approach. So today, if you look at it, the integrations are embedded in the InsuranceSuite, right? And it works great, right, at the beginning of the project. But as you evolve your integrations, as your projects become bigger and bigger, you realize and you see the need to separate the integration logic from functional logic, right? So how many of you here are on the functional side? Okay, so we all have integration crowd here, basically. Okay, so that's good. So what you would see is that as your project grows, your teams grow, there's a need for separate the functional and integration logic. In reality, though, right? I mean, you would all agree here too, is that integration developers are separate people from functional developers, right? So it is important to have that separation of concerns. So we don't have that today with the traditional approach, right? And then also, when you change integrations, typically, like in the current approach, you actually have to go redeploy IS or restart IS, right? So I'm going to use IS and InsuranceSuite as interchangeable terms. I'm going to use integration gateway and IG as the same thing, right? So we use IG so much within the development teams, so I might actually use some of I might call it IG. But going back here, so when you have to go change the integration logic, it could be as simple as I'm changing the data format, right? Or I want to maybe extract new fields. You actually have to go change the InsuranceSuite and redeploy that. The upgrades, if you think about it, the more logic you put into the core applications, the complicated it gets in terms of upgrades too, right? And then I'm sure, again, this is one thing we will probably agree is that Gosu skills are not readily available in the market, right? So it's not as common as Java skills, right? So you need actually specialized Gosu skills to implement integrations today, right? So what we're going to do is, this is why we actually introduce integration gateway. So let me spend a minute here on what is integration gateway so you actually get the concept. So integration gateway is a fit-for-purpose iPaaS platform based, actually enabled by open source technologies. It bridges between your InsuranceSuite and third-party apps. You could have several third-party apps. So what it does, it helps you connect with any API or like file or messaging systems. Or even within the Guidewire Cloud platform, you have cloud APIs, you have app events. So it actually can connect you with any of those. And then it can support any protocol, right? Although out of box, we have OAuth, we have basic authentication, but that doesn't preclude you, right, from building your own custom authentications. Like, let's say if you need to talk to legacy systems, right, and you need double security, we can support that, okay? Transform, any integration, right? Again, like I said, there's a technology standard, but there's never an integration standard, right? So you have to change, transform formats from a JSON to, let's say, XML or CSVs, right? So you need a transformation to be built in. And then orchestrate. If you think about it, there's any technical interaction patterns you can think of as request response, right? Or fire and forget, also called one-way, right? You can think about like async, sync, real-time, batch. You can model any technical interaction pattern with integration gateway. And the way it works, actually, it's something you're already familiar with. So every integration project, every InsuranceSuite project as one or more sub-projects. Each project corresponds to one integration. Each sub-project corresponds to integration app. And it's familiar DevOps lifecycle. The only thing is it's separated from the main InsuranceSuite. So let's say you would actually write an integration app. You would build it. You would locally develop it. You would locally test it. Everything is good. You go commit to a repo like a Bitbucket, and which kicks off like a pipeline. And then eventually you'll deploy into one of the GWCP environments, right? So all this sounds familiar because that's how InsuranceSuite works. We are completely aligned with InsuranceSuite paradigm as well. So some of the key features of Integration Gateway are, one, it's enabled by Camel integration framework. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Camel? Okay, I see some hands. So this is one of the most active, vibrant integration frameworks out there. It's a very large ecosystem. You have hundreds and hundreds of components part of the Camel integration framework. And on top of that, what we do, we actually provide additional components which are optimized for insurance business. And we sometimes specialize these components. As an example, right, you have S3. If you go to Camel integration framework, it actually has S3 component. What we do is we actually specialize it further because we know the insurance industry. Like an example, we were working with the teams last month is that when you have in a regulated industry, you need to deal with compliance, right? So any data you have, the transient data, there's like time to live, right? Which is not part of the standard component. So we actually specialize those components, right? So that's the value we provide on top of Camel componentry. And then it's based on the Guidewire service architecture. We didn't invent anything new here. It's been around for a while. It's hardened security. And then we have a bunch of utilities, again, to help speed up the development. We provide configuration management. Every integration app has some configurations you need to. So we actually have out-of-box capability to manage configurations for your integration apps. Persistence, if you think about a typical message flow, right? If you have like 1 or 3 or 4-step message flow, you may need to persist the message through the message flow. We actually have out-of-box Kafka to help you with that. We provide out-of-box logging utilities, right, to help to kind of log this information to the cloud monitoring server. And then I'll actually get to this, but we actually have a DevOps UI where a developer or a DevOps, an SRE kind of engineer can go in there and manage the entire integration lifecycle. So one of the other benefits you actually get, we were talking about isolating the logic from InsuranceSuite outside, is that you can get observability at the integration app level, right? Which is not really possible if everything is embedded in the InsuranceSuite. So and we actually provide that as a key feature of the InsuranceSuite. Standard integrations, I'm sure like many of you might have wondered, oh, why don't I have an integration I can just pick up and just configure it, right? So our friends in services teams actually have built quite a few standard integrations which you can take it and then configure it, right? We're also working with some new partners who are actually working with us on the standardized integrations as well. So this is just a view, or think of it as a preview of integration DevOps. You can see that it's the same as GCC view, right? It's aligned completely with GCC. You can list your integrations. You can pick one integrations. You can deploy it, undeploy it. Look at the logs. You can upgrade it, which is not here, but which we're actually working on. So these are some of the, this is the UI for DevOps persona to be able to manage the entire lifecycle. Just briefly on the technical architecture or, conceptual architecture, right? So if you look at it, again, this will sound you very familiar, right? This is how InsuranceSuite is deployed today. So you have a developer, right, who actually builds the applications either locally, right, and then commits it to a repo, which kicks off a pipeline, right? And then that will generate a Docker image, which is part of the integration gateway. It actually generates a Docker image. You can take that and deploy into your non-production or production environment. there's a couple key points I want to make with this. So as you can see, there's a customer iPaaS. What this means is that integration gateway can work with the customer iPaaS, either sending in a message. I mean, the idea is to coexist with it, right? And the other key point I want to make here is that you might, let's say if you have a self-managed customer today, and you move to cloud, you might already have tons of integrations. That can coexist while you build integration apps for the new business lines, right? So those couple points I want to make here. And actually, you can see the toolkit. This is on top of like what we provide with the open source. We also have a bunch of utilities to help with integrations. And we have given this deep thought, right? Because we understand the industry use cases very, very well. We kind of know what utilities you would need, right? So we have like a couple decades of experience in our services and product teams on what you need to be able to run an insurance business, right? So those are the things we have today, and we'll be adding more over time, right? And the idea is to make it easier for you to quickly able to build the integrations. So I'm going to show you a quick demo here, just to kind of like how you can isolate the logic, integration logic from the InsuranceSuite, and then you can like change it, evolve it, iterate on it, and deploy it. So that's something we'll actually show. OK, so here's a scenario so that you actually follow through the demo. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the claim center. We are going to request a new police report, which will invoke an IG app. The IG app is built to mediate between InsuranceSuite and a third-party police report service. OK? And then what we're going to do is to demonstrate the value of integration gateway, which is that you can be more agile because the integration logic is outside the InsuranceSuite. You can iterate as often as you want without bringing down the IS or redeploying the IS. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the IG app. Simple logic. We'll actually add a couple lines of code to add some notes to the notes section of the claim center. And then once we do that, we actually commit that to the repo and then deploy it. And then once you have that, if we go back to the claim center and rerun the police report, you would actually see those two notes added because that's what we changed. OK? So I'm sure you're familiar with the claim center, right? You've seen this many times. As you can see, we're going to take an existing claim. We're going to create a new police report, right? And just enter all the required data. The name of the investigative agency here is Investigative Services. We just picked a name, right? And then we'll just complete entering all the required data. OK? And now you can see that the way this works is it actually sends a request to third-party service, which creates the order ID. I'm actually going to walk you through the interaction flow. But also, you can see that if you go look at the notes, so when you get the report, what it happens is there's a lot of conflict between the claim file and the report you actually got from the police report, right? So we're not going to change any of that. We're just going to see that we actually received a report, right? And then once we change it, we'll come back here. So you can see in the notes section now, when we retrieve the police report, there's nothing there, OK? So here is the interaction flow, just to give you an idea, right? So Claim Center, when it invokes the integration app, it puts a message into the event queue, which sends a synchronous request to integration app, and which sends a synchronous request to third-party app. And then you get sync request response paradigm, basically. And then after a while, you actually receive the actual report. And the integration gateway goes and updates your Claim Center with the data and also the report. And then when you come back and wanted to view the report, you can actually view the report. We actually store that report in the S3 as well. So here is the Camel route, just standard Camel route with a REST outbound call. And what we're going to do is we're going to change that. We have that code commented, right? We're going to go back and change that route to add notes to the notes section, right? So once you make the changes, what you typically do is you actually commit to the repo. That's what we're going to do here. So once you do that, it pushes to the repo. And now here is your team city, right? So you have a bunch of steps here where you can actually build the actual integration app you developed. And then you can run some validation, sniff testing to make sure it's actually working. And then you publish, which is really about building a Docker image. And then you deploy it. It does take a few minutes here, but just fast forward. The deployment takes a few minutes here. But just for the video here, we cut that time. So you'll see that now from here, we are able to deploy it to the one of the environments. Typical stuff you need to do when you have to go deploy it. Okay. Now, this is one thing, so one of the things I've been talking about is observability at the integration level. That's a query string in Sumo Logic that takes you to the actual integration app. So if you want to debug, you want to look at the nodes, you can actually see this at the integration app level. Now, what we do is we go back to the claim center. Because we have made some changes to the integration app, we have not changed InsuranceSuite. We have not redeployed IS. Now, what you should see is a new police report will be pulled. At the same time, because we actually changed integration app to add new nodes, you should also see some nodes in the claim center. Okay, so the police report is pulled, and now if you go to the nodes section, you actually see the new nodes, right? So see the beauty of this, right? Because we change integration app, you can iterate as many times as possible without changing your IS. That is the core value we're actually getting out of IG. Just to show you that these reports are also in S3, you can actually go browse this. But that's the main essence of the demo here. Okay. Okay, so now we have just seen a quick demo, right? The idea, again, was to demonstrate how you can independently manage your integration apps outside of InsuranceSuite. So let's look at some sample use cases to give you more depth on how this can be used. So this is an example of inbound integration where you're actually getting a glass claims file. So if you look at the as-is scenario, which is the traditional approach, you have to go write some code, like a GoSoup code, to handle files, retrieved from S3. You may have to add code to split that into individual records, and then you need some more logic, like GoSoup code, some more code, to parse those records, map it to the claim center entity or policy center entities. In the to-be approach with the integration gateway, what you're doing is, one, you're isolating the logic. The integration gateway integration logic is outside the claim center. And then you're also using out-of-box componentry, right? You're not adding a lot of code here, right? So as an example, in the first step, routes, so file processor, if you look at Camel, Camel actually has out-of-box file components. You can actually take that to retrieve the file from S3, and then traverse through the file records. And then once you get it, you actually could use low-code DSL to process those records, right? So the benefits you see that is, one, the logic is outside the integration. You're eliminating or reducing a bunch of GoSoup code related to the integration apps, right? Also, because you are able to use out-of-box componentry, like from Camel or from integration gateway, that actually reduces your maintenance, overall maintenance of your apps, right? Because you have less code to maintain. And then because this is an independent microservice, let's say you have millions of files coming in a peak scenario. You can independently scale this integration app, right? So that's the benefit. That's some of the benefits you actually get with integration app gateway. So this is another example. This is an outbound, right? So where you actually have to publish outbound messages. Again, in the as-is scenario, you have to write GoSoup code to for eventing, right, or triggering events. And then you also have to write goes to code to deliver those event and messages to the third-party broker. In the integration gateway and app events approach, what you're doing is, one, you're bringing the logic outside the core application, and then application events does the heavy lifting to detect those events, and then create some data and send that as an outbound message to integration gateway. And once the integration gateway receives the message, you can transform it, you can do massaging, and then put it onto the third-party message broker, right? So again, similar benefits. App events is doing the most of the work here. You don't have to write a bunch of code to detect those events and then package the data to send it outside. App events does most of that stuff. And the integration gateway, again, we are talking about low-code DSL to be able to massage that and put it into the broker. So as an example, integration gateway uses Camel, like I was talking about. Camel has a JMS component, right? So you don't have to do much work there. You just take the JMS component and deliver that. So that's the benefit you get. OK. So this is some examples of best practices. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list. We're going to have a lot of best practices in the product documentation as well. Just to kind of highlight some important one, I would highly recommend to leverage out-of-box patterns and pre-built integrations, or we also call standard integrations or connect apps. You'd see those different names for the same thing. But the reason is we encode a lot of best practices into these patterns and standard integration. So you'd actually benefit from that versus you learning on your own. Okay. Integration gateways is only available on cloud, right? So obviously, it works best when everything is on cloud. Camel componentry, just our experience, always use the latest version of the Camel components, right? Because one, there's more bug fixes. They might have introduced the new features. And we are doing our best. Whenever we ship an integration gateway, we'll always try to do our best to ship the latest version of Camel runtime as well. And DevOps, cloud DevOps is always a question, right? And it's even like more important in an integration world, right? So integration gateway supports local development. So you can actually develop locally and unit test locally with mock endpoints. And then once everything is good, you're confident that this is good to go. You actually commit to the repo, at which point the pipeline takes over, right? But you could do a lot of local development with mocking the endpoints. And then once you have everything ready, then you can go to end-to-end testing. So we do actually recommend local development as much as possible. So once you get hands-on with integration gateway, you'd actually see that it's a very flexible framework, right? And a curious developer could do anything with integration gateway, right? So one, I think this is really about what you should not be doing with integration gateway, right? One, do not use it as an enterprise or a enterprise iPaaS. We have designed this to really be an iPaaS platform for integrating or bridging between InsuranceSuite and third party. It's not meant to be an enterprise iPaaS. We included, like I was talking about, out-of-box Kafka topics and configuration management. So these are meant to be just to be used with integration apps. Do not use that as a general purpose databases. That's not what it's designed for. Camel componentry, again, as you get to know Camel, right? It's a large ecosystem. There's so much stuff in there, so many companies contributing components, right? So again, like a curious developer, somebody could take and they can write bots. They can do general app development, right? But we do not want you to do that. Just use it for integration logic only. And then the other thing, what we have seen, again, the reason I'm calling out all these anti-patterns is something when we start socializing with customers, we already see some of these, like, hey, I can write a business process because it's so flexible. Plus, please don't. It's not meant to be a business process management, OK? So You may know that we have been on early access program for last couple releases. So we actually have one customer who went into production, who's already in production since last couple months. We actually have working with other customers too. So this is a customer who wants to build a new kind of rental insurance solution where they actually have to require to multiple insurtech vendors. And obviously they chose InsuranceSuite on cloud because it's faster time to market. And then they chose to go with integration gateway because they have a lot of componentry, out-of-box componentry to go build these integrations, right? And the results were actually fantastic because the constraint was to go live soon, right? They actually could go live in 5 months where the timeline was actually 6 months. So, and they used, using the integration gateway, accelerated the development by 3 months as opposed to a point-to-point integrations. The other key benefit they got with that, because they started with one integration flow, they added upon that, they actually added more integration flows without bringing down the IS. That's the benefit you got, right? And then we just did a rough measurement of what's the overall cost using integration gateway versus traditional approach. There was 1 PY in cost savings, right? So you can actually see some of the some of the integrations this customer built, Box, LexisNexis, SafeLight. So we're also working with multiple partners. So I know some of the partners here are working with us on integration gateway. Can you raise your hands? Anyone working? Okay, I see some of them. Yeah, I would highly encourage you if you wanted to work with us on an early access program, please do so. We'll actually give you some contacts to reach out to. Thank you guys for working with us on that. So I know what's going on in your mind, right? I'm like, how do I get started, right? So if you are a self-managed customer, you are actually moving to cloud. You don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting. You can actually lift and shift your existing integrations to cloud. So it should work as is for the most part, maybe minor tweaks. And then you can adopt new integrations at your own speed using the cloud integration framework. Now, if you're a already GWCP customer who is starting new, like a greenfield customer who is starting new with Guidewire, we would highly recommend you to use cloud integration framework. You can build all your net new integrations using the cloud framework. And then, or let's say if you have some integrations where you are spending a lot of time, it's high maintenance code, and you actually see value in refactoring your integrations using the integration framework, that's also a good opportunity, right? Like as an example, if you already have a standard integration from us, you might want to use that, right? And not have to maintain your own code, right? So that's another maybe opportunity for you to look at some value-driven refactoring of the existing integrations. Release timeline here. So we have been in the early access for last couple releases. We're going to GA this in, the plan is to GA in spring 2022. For application events too, we've been EAing and we have a lot of feedback. We buttoned up, so we're ready to go GA as well. And we're going to GA policy and claim center for app events in Elysian as well. So cloud API, it's been already there, right? We've been expanding coverage, adding more APIs, and we'll continue to do so in the next release as well. The key takeaways, one, you can see the value you get because you can evolve your integration apps independently of InsuranceSuite. You can be more agile. You can iterate on it as much as you want. You can reduce the overall risk of your project. And then the second key takeaway is that because it's all about developer productivity, right? You cannot solve with staple buttons, like one-click button. The idea is how easy can you make, right? How can you improve developer productivity? And that's what we plan. That's what you would actually get by using integration gateway enabled by Camel, right? And then you get cloud scalability, right? I mean, there's always scenarios which are peak scenarios where you need to be highly scalable at an integration level. You get cloud scalability. You get observability at the integration app granularity. And then this will lead you to faster time to market and increased competitive advantage. So again, to wrap it up here, the call to action here is that if you are self-managed customers, please contact your sales representative, right, to see how you can actually move to cloud. If you're already on the cloud journey with us on GWCP, talk to your CSMs about how do you actually leverage cloud integration framework as an early access customers. They will reach out to us, right, but work through your CSMs. And if you're partners, I know some of you are already working with us, but if there's new partners who wants to engage with us, please work with alliances. And then if you wanted to learn more about the standard integrations which our services teams have built, there's an email, right? You can take a picture if you like. They'll actually give you more information on those. One more quick thing. We have few more sessions on the integration framework overall. So there's one Ask Me Anything, which Chris is leading tomorrow, and then I'll be on part of it too. So if you have any questions related to app services in general or integration, we'll be there. We also have a dedicated session for outbound integration with app events in Insurance Cloud. And then there's a session, I believe it's right after this, right, which is talking about the connect apps or the standardized integrations as well.